On behalf of SBK Healthcare, I'd like to say how proud we are of this event, and we hope that you find it useful and beneficial. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Mike Scanlan. He is a mental health consultant at Therapies.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, and thanks everybody for coming in tonight. I know you've all been so incredibly busy, and just to put a bit of a shine on tonight, I want to also thank SBK for organising it, because I think this is such an important, really crucial issue, because what we know is that anything like this dreadful situation we're in will have ramifications, and one of those ramifications possibly is an increase in that sense of hopelessness that comes with burnout. And we're going to really have a go tonight to look at some solutions. So this isn't just going to be a doom and gloom session, because I don't think we need that. I think that what we need is a range of solutions, and I use a couple of therapy approaches in my work, but they all come from pretty much come from a strengths basis and a can-do rather than can't-do philosophy. And so if I start the presentation, and I can see questions coming in already, and I had a quick look and there was a couple up before we even started. So I am going to try and find time to answer that. But I guess that means that we do need to be on top of things. Before I go to the next slide, just to say I left the NHS after a pretty long, well, very long, it felt, career, and I've been working for myself with this piece of work. I sort of did it as a way towards retirement, but been busier than ever. But I've just gone back into the NHS, not in the capacity I was before, but I think in a more useful capacity, actually. So I am back running clinics, seeing people, and doing webinars like this. So here we go. So this first slide, I'm just trying to put a bit of perspective around this. So if we just stop for a moment and imagine we were living amongst an epidemic, or amidst an epidemic that affected vast swathes of professionals, was growing in prevalence, impacted on families, and you might think we were talking about COVID-19, but actually burnout, as I'm sure you're all aware, has been a real issue within healthcare, particularly for many, many years, and across most industrialized providers of healthcare, and a real issue here in the UK. And our worry is that people have been, it feels to me like, and when I left the NHS, it certainly felt like I was kind of hanging on grimly. And going back, I've rediscovered a love of it. So that's been, and I suppose going back during this time, we also have a sort of increased sense of mission. And my hope is that what we can do tonight is use what we're doing to nourish us, to sustain us, and to help us get through what none of us really know is going to be, how long it's going to last, or how dreadful it's going to become. And I too, like so many people, watch the government briefing every day. I think today it was at 5 o'clock, and at the moment it does feel like we're right in the middle of something pretty major. And it made me think about tonight's presentation, and I keep on hearing people that I see for therapy, and particularly some of the very, very old people that I see for therapy, who are using that sense of, it does feel like we are, under siege. And that word under siege is one that we normally attribute to being at war. And I think for many of us, it might feel like that. Certainly for many of you guys, it might actually feel like, a real attritional war against a foe whom we know not enough about. And I think that's one of the real scary stuff. And a foe against who we might not always be that well equipped for either, as we all know. The silver lining here is that when we look through the spectacles of history, but we look deliberately and on purpose, we choose to actually, what can I find from history that might bring me a crumb of comfort, something to help us move forward. And there's a lot there, because what we get is that if we look at the last two great wars, if we look at the Vietnam War for America, the outcome of these wars is always transformational change to the culture and to society. And some of that change can be majorly important. And my hope is that I was so buoyed up by actually hearing Boris Johnson, whom, I think we all spare a thought for tonight as well. And that's not something I kind of thought I'd hear myself say, but compassion is compassion. And I think we're all really trying hard now. But Boris Johnson actually refuted Mrs. Thatcher's claim that there's no such thing as society. And I've never believed that. But what I really feel is that this is going to be an opportunity for us to move forward as a nation, and to move forward and for healthcare to get the just deserves that we know has been coming for a long, long time. So, this epidemic of burnout was there before COVID-19. And our worry is that, it might even get worse. So tonight's webinar is largely about how we can do something about that. So when we look at how we define burnout, and I'm not going to spend too long on these slides, but I think they are interesting, because we do have to be aware that burnout is manifested by feelings of exhaustion. And if I go through these one by one, I think this is where it becomes so important that we are looking after ourselves physically and psychologically. And I'm not covering this in nearly enough detail tonight. But what I wanted to say here was, what I will be doing is sending to SBK all of my meditations. And the title of tonight's show is Let's Be Mindful About Burnout. And I'm something of a sleep specialist. And a lot of my work is very often with people who struggle with sleep, and very often they are shift workers and public servants. And the one thing, I might run a 6-week sleep course, and at the end of it, the most popular comment I get is, I love leaves on a stream. So what I will be sending out is a really very, very effective sleep meditation that can be very transformational for your sleep. So although we're not covering it tonight, I think sleep is so crucial. And letting go of the worries of the day mindfully before we go to sleep can help mitigate those feelings of exhaustion that I think so many of you are feeling. This depersonalization, which is characterized by a sense of cynicism, this can be pervasive, and it can be catching, And I think it's just being mindful enough to listen to ourselves and to become aware of how we're responding, and to be careful that we're not responding with an over rich sense of cynicism, because it doesn't help us, and I don't believe it helps the people that we work with. The last one is, and the last two are a loss of self-efficacy, and that's when we stop feeling like we're making a difference. I kind of think that's going to be less of an issue during this particularly difficult time, because one thing I am picking up on is that we all know that we're trying our hardest and we are making a difference. And if we go back to the cynicism, I think I'm focusing on that one so much because cynicism is the manifestation of burnout that, as it says here, has the highest risk of progressing on to serious consequences. And cynicism is a response. And at this point, I feel duty bound to mention my favorite book ever, which is Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning. And I remember reading that quite a number of years ago now, and coming across a statement by Frankl, remembering that at the time he was recovering from a period of time when he had been in his own battle, his own war zone, as a prisoner in a Nazi death camp, of which thankfully he came out the other side. But in the book, he writes that between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space lies our freedom. And I think if we stop and find that space, and mindfulness helps us to do that, and we feel that cynicism bubbling out, and we're able to just stop and take a breath and wait for that wave of cynicism to just begin to dissipate and come down. And we have a choice then, don't we? We can keep it to ourselves, we can talk about it intelligently and curiously and compassionately, but to react with cynicism just, I don't believe, will help anybody. And that's easy for me to say, who isn't on a hospital ward, but I'm someone, I think, who, like you guys, is just trying to do our, as we all are, our very, very best. So, and the drivers, the sort of god of burnout literature is always the Maslach, and the Maslach inventory is the one that is often quoted. But I think that we do need to think about what we can do, because so often when we think about burnout, we focus perhaps too much on what we can do individually about our own health and well-being, our own psychology, our own sleep, our own physical health, when the research seems to suggest that actually the best way to sort out or to improve this epidemic of burnout that was here before COVID-19 is to be aware of work overload. And work overload is one of those factors that can make such a detrimental impact on our health. And I know that one from my time in the NHS. A chaotic work environment is also another one. And I think some of you may be experiencing that. And one of my worries, I think, my daughter, my Isabel, is 23. She's an actress, but she's volunteering at the moment for the NHS. And she came up with a really good point. She said, "Dad, the thing I'm most anxious about is arriving and not knowing what to do, and actually adding to the chaos by being a hindrance. And my hope is that we use the volunteers wisely and well, and that people like my daughter are able to be as effective as they possibly can." Look at this one here, insufficient reward. I'm just going to allow us to think about that, because this is where the cynicism can creep in. And I've seen so much stuff on social media about, the clapping when the pay rise was refused. And I just think this isn't the time, but I do believe in a historical context that there will be some real shift when we come to an end of this, and people will look at the NHS with very different spectacles. I can't believe we'll do anything else but that. Breakdown of the community, and the community here means of our work community, the community of professionals, the community of people that we are part of. The absence of fairness linked in, I suppose, with insufficient reward and conflicting values. And again, I think values is so incredibly important here, isn't it? And at the moment, my belief is that this is when we will all find ourselves reconnecting with those core values that brought us into healthcare in the first place, probably. And that isn't something that I hope that we'll struggle with over the next few months. So, on to the first exercise that I really hope is going to help. And I'm a firm believer in play, and I'm going to ask you guys all out there to just for a moment, just pretend, I'm going to do it, and look, there I am. I'm going to do it. Just pretend that you're actually driving a car for a moment, and that you're driving a car down a road that is very, very quiet, very little traffic, a bit like at the moment, really. And if you just grab hold of your steering wheel, nobody can see you. You can all see me. So the only one looking a right Egypt is me. But if you grab hold of your steering wheel for a moment and just imagine you've got the music on and you're driving down a country lane and there's not much traffic and you're really enjoying the drive. And then we stop and we put the handbrake on, and I come over and I put a carpet over your front windscreen so that you can't see where you're going, and I rip off your side mirrors. And now I ask you guys, please, just notice that the only way that you can judge where you're going and what the width of the road is by looking in the rear view mirror. And if I ask you all to actually tilt your head up and just keep your head and imagine you're looking in the rear view mirror and start to drive. How does that feel? Uncomfortable? Full of trepidation and a sense of, oh my God, I'm going to crash at any moment, and let go. And I think that the use of this metaphor is about what I'm getting from an awful lot of people is they are talking about how things were and hearkening back to how things were before COVID-19, but they're not doing it mindfully. They're not doing it deliberately and on purpose, you know, to look at the historical context for what we might learn. People are just finding themselves taken back to perhaps how they failed in crises that they've been in earlier points of their lives, or difficulties that they've had in the past. And that just brings about feelings of doubt and fear for our own ability to cope, because we look back through very negative eyes. And now what I'd like you to do again is to grab hold of the steering wheel again and to imagine now that we're driving on this road, the one on my slide, and we're driving along, but our eyes are fixed only on the horizon. The only thing we're interested in is what's over the hill beyond that horizon. You know, what's it going to look like? What will be happening then? How are things going to be? And we gaze and we get stuck looking at the horizon. And do you know what I noticed there is that I'm not seeing any of the scenery. I'm paying no attention to the colleagues that are trying to make me smile and laugh. I'm paying no attention to my loved ones when I get home. I'm struggling because my sense of being in this present moment has dissipated and is gone. You know, so if we drop our hands for a moment and just think about this, because mindfulness as a practice becomes most useful when we realize the lack of workability of only thinking about when this is all over and getting stuck with hopes and getting stuck with, I wish it was all over, because it isn't. And now is the only time we can ever live. And similarly, if we find ourselves trying to live now governed on what has been before, we also struggle. The brain is most comfortable when we are in this present moment. We are most comfortable. And do you know what? If we're not doing that, when we get home from work and our heads are full of our day and we don't let go of that, and our heads are full of what might be and what has been, the result is we don't even allow the joys, the pleasure, the love, the companionship, the care that the people around us are trying to give us. We don't let it in because we're not present. So being present matters now more than ever before. And mindfulness is not about just meditating. Mindfulness is a stance. And I think the stance that's going to get us through this terrible time is to be present. And the other wonderful thing about being present is that we know that this too shall pass, because this moment will soon be an old moment, and the new moments to come will one day be much better. But we're better staying in this present moment. And a lot of the meditations, I'm going to send Vanessa all of my meditations. And a lot of the meditations, and some of them are absolutely brilliantly useful for torrid times, and times when we're busy, because the ones that are called the 3-stage breathing space meditations literally, you can do that meditation in 3 or 4 minutes, and they're guided instructions, and they're really helpful. So, we had a double click then. So the second thing I want to talk about as a strategy for getting through this is to just stop for a moment and just think about our response. Back to the Viktor Frankl stuff, aren't we? Not reacting, but responding. And I just want us to think about what so many, I think millions of people are doing at the moment is we're getting very worrying thoughts. We're getting lots of distressing mind stuff coming into our brains. We're seeing stuff, we're hearing stuff. And so many of us, the human response when that occurs is to push it like a great big huge beach ball under the waves, under the water, and to keep it there. And we know that if that beach ball is under the water, then we can see the scenery around us, you know, and we feel kind of a sense of control again because the beach ball isn't blocking our view. So we keep it pushed down, and we do that mentally and psychologically. You know, we keep what's happening firmly locked away. We don't talk about it. We don't share it. We keep it under. And when the thoughts come into our head, we try not to have the thoughts. And when the feelings come, we try not to have the feelings. Colleagues and friends, that doesn't work, you know, because the pressure of keeping that beach ball under means that if we get slightly distracted, poof, the beach ball comes back up with force. And that's when anxiety surges, you know, and that's when we see people struggling with panic. We see people struggling with real huge bursts of anxiety. That's when we see people sat in the car park crying before their shift. What we need to be doing is we need to be talking, we need to be sharing, we need to be listening, you know, and we need to be accepting that when thoughts come, if we can meet them with curiosity and that half smile of mindfulness, and we can lean into them and be curious about them. And if we use tools like, there's a wonderful free app called Mood Tools that is a great tool. If we just sit down and process some of our thoughts using Mood Tools, or we sit down and we just meditate, or we sit down and we talk with others about what's going on, and we are honest about the thoughts we're getting, and together we process them, so much more healthy, so much more viable, so much more workable. So one of the real important ways that we're going to come out the other side is by sharing and talking to each other, and above all, being there for others when they want to talk, and just listening, actively listening. You know, we forget amidst all of these whizzy therapy approaches that, you know, there's so much more. I'm just going to just go back one. Oh, there. I just want to, I always do this, I always change slides because I think, no, I think I'll do this one next. Before we get to what I think is going to be, I really hope is going to be hugely useful for so many of you, quick time check there, is the mountain meditation. It's the go-to meditation to take us through difficult times. But before we get there, I just want to reflect on crises and difficult times in my career, and what's really, really helped me at various stages. So I'm kind of going back to some really difficult times when we've had significant issues, actually usually to do with underfunding, says he, when he promised not to be political, but they are. And we've had times in some of the mental health teams where I've worked where, because of the shortage of staff and the demands, that things have felt quite chaotic, and some of those manifestations of burnout have begun to show. And at those times, something that really has helped me is actually encouraging staff to have a huddle. You know, if you watch sports psychology, has so much evidence about the benefit of a huddle. You know, you see it in nearly all team sports when things are going badly, particularly rugby, actually. And you see that, you know, when things are in a place of struggle, people are beginning to lose their heads. A really good captain will call people together and just snug in a bit and just have a huddle and talk about what's going on and find some solutions. Daily huddles. And if you're not having daily huddles, and they should be close, you know, and we should be aware of body language, because if we're all doing a daily huddle and our shoulders are crossed and there's a frown on our faces, that isn't going to help. You know, back to the Viktor Frankl, our response, stimulus and response, there's a space. Find that warm, smiling, open response and huddle. I think the other one is, when we're in this sort of situation, is take time to prepare for the day, you know, and identify and solve problems as we go along if we can, rather than pushing the beach ball under and saying, I will get to that, I will get to that. So talking about things, sharing them. And I think that to remember the role of leaders here, and I love this one here, because actually I think there's a real truth about this, that the real on the ground staff lead. And at this time when things are so difficult, what we need is our leaders coaching, you know, helping us, being there, making use of their experience. But we are actually, those of us on the front line, those of you on the front line, you know, you're the ones who are leading this, and not to remember that, forget that. And the final one I think is so important. And this is, I think, one of the tenets I've tried to take into my leadership role when I was a nurse consultant in the NHS. And that was, do as you would be done by. You know, speak to people the way you would like to be spoken to. Ask people to do stuff only as long as you're prepared to do it as well. And meet people in the way you want to be met by others. And I just think that taking some of this back into your workplace, if it's not there already, might be hugely valuable. So let's now move on to what I think is probably going to be my favorite bit of the evening. Take your mountain into the workplace. Yes, everybody, it's time for a meditate. But this isn't just any meditation. I think this is the it's my favorite meditation, and I've been using this for torrid times in my career. And I'll be honest with you, I have a thing called dyscalculus, where I can't add up, and my maths is next to non-existent, to the point where I tried to do my prescribing course, and I got 14% on the maths exam, which tells you just how poor I am at this. And so as a nurse leader, when I went to a finance meeting, they struck me with a sense of horror and fear. And I went into every finance meeting carrying and taking my mountain with me. So I'm going to help you guys take your mountain into work tomorrow or tonight. Take it everywhere. It's all about finding your mountain. So we just begin by just asking you to just close your eyes for a second and to see if you can find your mountain. That's my mountain there, you know, that's my mountain. And go and find your mountain. Is there mountains sometimes have resonance with us and meaning and achievement associated with them? Mountain you've climbed, or a mountain you love. Or when I say the word mountain, the mountain that comes into your mind's eye. And if you're not a visualizer, use my mountain, the one that's on the screen there. And just find that mountain. And please remember that the brain knows if we're not looking strong and calm and dignified. And meditation works so much better if we are looking dignified. So if we just straighten our spines a little bit and sit ourselves up and allow our shoulders to lower and find that mindful half smile that kind of looks vaguely confident. There's mine. Okay? And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to just gently close your eyes or half close them. And I'm sending through the URL on my YouTube channel for this meditation. And if you find it useful tonight, I suggest you start embodying your mountain before every shift and taking it through your shift. And if you get a moment, stopping, reconnecting with that mountain to help us get through what's going to be a difficult time. So to prevent burnout, let's find your mountain. So with no more ado, we'll start the meditation with the Ting Say bells. Here they are, just there. And if you just begin this meditation by just closing your eyes or half closing, or fixing your eyes on a spot, just maybe 3 or 4 feet in front of you on the floor. Ideally, just gently close those eyes. And we start the meditation by using sound. I just ask you to listen to the sounds outside the room that you're sitting in. I can hear bird song, it's lovely. And take your attention in and find the sounds in the room where you're sitting. And then bring your attention all the way in and find the sound that your breathing makes as you inhale and you exhale. It's wonderful. And now bring into your mind's eye your mountain. And hold it gently. And at any time, if your mind wanders, as it does because the human mind wanders, just smile and say, not now, thanks. And bring it back to this meditation, to my voice, to your mountain. And as we sit here, just holding that mountain in our mind's eye, I'd just like you to notice that your body can be like that mountain. So we pay particular mindful attention to the lofty peak of your mountain. We just allow our neck and our head to just lengthen slightly. And we notice the slopes and the sides of the mountain. And these can be like our arms, our chest, our back. And then we pay attention to the sheer massiveness, the immovability of the core of that mountain. And we find that in our sit bones, in our own core. And we notice that the mountain is rooted into the valleys and the world and the earth below. And as we press our feet into the ground beneath us, we too find that solidity and that sense of rootedness. We hold that. And as we look at our mountain, I just want you to consider that the mountain, the lofty peak of the mountain, is beset by the changing seasons. And in the winter time, the winds blow, the rain lashes the mountain, the cold freezes the mountain, and the storms feel tempestuous as if they will never end. but they do. And the mountain just sits there and allows it and comes out the other side. And from winter, very gently, we move, don't we, into spring. Things are better, and there's new growth and new beginnings. And the mountain becomes swathed in green and flowers, perhaps. And then spring turns into summer, and summer can be tough, over hot, baked, and the mountain doesn't change. It just sits there. No matter what the season, the mountain is still there, because the seasons change, but the mountain doesn't. And it moves into autumn and back into winter again. And now I want you to take your attention to you and find your own mountain within you. And notice that at the moment, our emotional weather is stormy, and we are going through a very difficult season. And we too are being buffeted and shaken. But spring will come. And we, like the mountain, can find that sense of presence and that deep, deep wisdom that we meet each day, each moment, with equanimity and calm and the confidence in ourselves. And let's see if we can find that mountain in us. Take our attention to our head and our shoulders, and particularly our core, and find that strength. And press our feet into the ground below. And now take your attention to your breath. As we breathe in, we notice that the mountain breathes. And we breathe in and we breathe out. And our mountain becomes this living, breathing center of strength and permanence. And we feel that truthfulness that we, like the mountain, will move. The weather will change, but we will stay the same. And we will sit through this, and we will find our strength, and we will come out into spring. And we hold that sense of, and that physicality of the mountain. And just take yourself into work tomorrow in your mind's eye, deliberately and on purpose for a moment. And just imagine now taking this feeling, this strength, this attitude and response. And we want people to see that. We want people to take a double look at us, because they're going to see the mountain within us. And I'm just going to ask you to sit and hold that mountain for 30 seconds as we move towards the end of this meditation. Smiling, embodying that mountain. And just one more slide, because I'm aware we do want to do questions. So I'm just going to take you in, and this is just a quite brilliant exercise that I'm going to suggest you do, and I will send SBK the handout. It's very simple. I'm just going to ask you, if you get a moment, to go on to Google and Google, or use the URL on the slide, the VIA Character Strength quiz. And this is a hugely researched positive psychology piece of research, and it's ongoing. And when you Google this, what will come up is the VIA Character Strength Survey. I'm going to ask you guys, do the survey, and at the end of it, don't pay any money because it's free. You don't need to pay anything. And at the end, as long as you've filled in the form just at the beginning, which is short and very quick, and the quiz takes about 15 minutes, what it will give you is your top character strengths. And I'm going to ask you to choose your top 2 or 3. And once we know what our character strengths are, every day you can find your mountain, you can meet your thoughts with that equanimity, and you can say to yourself, right, which character strength am I taking to work with me today? And which character strength am I going to use to improve my day, to add strength? And by using character strength, we can, and lots of very good research show that by bringing character strength into our lives, the result is increased levels of happiness and decreased levels of depression and sadness and burnout. So, and it's a fascinating thing, and it's real quite fun to get your sort of your loved ones to do it as well. And just to finish, you know, kindness will be what gets us through. Compassion, kindness, wisdom, and response. Because if our workplaces are places of kinship that are full of kindness, we're more attentive to others, we're more tuned in to our own needs and the needs of others. We find trust, and that allows a therapeutic alliance between ourselves and our colleagues, which will lead to better outcomes for us all. So please, you know, we're kind, we're health professionals. Find that kindness and apply it to self and to others. And I hope what I've shared has been of use to some of you, but I think that's a good slide to keep up while we go back to Vanessa and any questions that might be coming up. And I can see there's loads there. So I'm just going to click and yep. And I'm not going to do any surnames here. I'm just going to say the names that are coming up. We've had Saeed saying, can we have a copy? I shall. Yeah, of course you can. And I'm going to send lots of other stuff. Do you have any tips, says Jack, for getting to sleep quickly when you don't finish work till 10 or 11 o'clock? Right, yeah, I am. So another tip I'm going to give you here is if you go onto YouTube, there's a I'm an absolute lover of yin yoga. And yin yoga can be done as a 20-minute bedtime yoga sequence. You just Google Cassandra and on YouTube, and Cassandra is rather marvelous, and or Megan Halewood. And I'm actually writing a book at the moment, blending mindfulness, acceptance, and yoga as a package. So have a look and actually do the bed yoga. You sit on your bed, and it's the most relaxing, soothing thing. And then before you go to sleep, listen to my Leaves on a Stream meditation, Jack, and you will sleep. People just do. It's difficult to huddle when we're staying 2 meters apart. Oh, yeah, thanks for that one. Metaphoric huddle, you know, get your 2 meters apart, lean in, smile, and huddle that way. How do you try and manage the frustration when things aren't being done from the centre? The severe lack of testing of staff, which you know will cost lives. Do you know, I think this is so difficult, but I'm going to imbue the Serenity Prayer. Live your lives by the Serenity Prayer, because if we get into a struggle and a fight with our own brains, that will exhaust us more than anything else. The Serenity Prayer, do you remember? It's, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept that which I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So this isn't resignation. This is wonderful, wise acceptance. We do write letters, we do stamp our feet, but we don't get into a fight that we can't win with our own brain. So I am just running these through, and I hope this is useful. I'm starting to dread going into work the next day. How can I reframe my thoughts about it? Do you know, I think I would say use the mountain meditation and meet those thoughts with a real quiet curiosity, you know, and ask yourself, why am I dreading it? Because I'm scared. Why am I scared? Because I love my life. Why do I love my life? Because I'm a good person and I'm happy. Now, that's not a bad place to get to, is it? I'm a good person and I'm happy. And, you know, we're high empaths, and we've got to use that empathy to try and help us to get through. What do you do when you are worried about not surviving this? I haven't seen my family for 2 weeks and I'm scared. I worry about my lovely daughter, you know, and I think that the only way here is, again, whatever you do, don't push that beach ball of worry under the water. Share your worries, talk about them, and you know, use every opportunity to use social media. Zoom is absolutely fantastic, you know, and notice that you're scared because you love, and you love because you're empathic, and you're empathic and you love life, you know. Do you know, I keep on saying that. How do you huddle keeps on jumping back to that one. It makes me feel like such an Egypt. Someone's just said some lovely stuff there. How can I find a sense of calm during my working shift? What I'm going to say to you is use the 3-stage breathing space with difficulties, and I'm going to send that one through. It's gorgeous. How can I remain calm at home and work and stop worrying? I'm going to say don't try and stop worrying. But there's another tip I'm going to give you, which is something called structured worry time. And if you don't mind, SBK, I'll send you the handout for structured worry time as well. And it's about choosing when you worry and worrying wisely rather than our brain taking over the worry process. I'm finding it difficult and hard to separate leisure from work time, as I'm spending the majority of my time in the same room. I want to stay mentally healthy in order to best support my clients, but I have no option to be in the 4 walls the majority of the time. Meditation, 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 and more meditation. Use the mountain, the 3-stage breathing spaces, and social media. Do you know? I found my mountain. Thank you. I used to say everything. I don't know what happens here. It keeps jumping. I think everything will pass. I want to go back to that one. Everything will work out in the wash. A few pink items and some missing socks, but on the whole, I like that. You know, that we'll come through this, and everything will come out in the wash. We're doing daily virtual hurdles over Teams to check in with each other. Brilliant. Humor. Yeah, humor's going to get it there. So many of you talking about uncertainty. You know, the great Seligman said that all anxiety is predicated upon a loss of control and uncertainty. You know, we have to find a place of acceptance that this uncertainty is dreadful. And the best way to deal with uncertainty is not to push it away, but to meet it with a really lovely, warm curiosity and acceptance, you know, and help with the uncertainty by sharing and talking and living by the serenity prayer, you know. How do I manage or avoid colleagues, especially my manager, transferring her anxiety on me? Now, that's the one where I found the mountain meditation so useful, because if we hold our mountain, then what I find is that stuff bounces off, you know, metaphorically. And somebody else has said that I work as a therapist and I'm struggling to maintain I'm struggling to maintain my own anxieties, and I'm avoiding bringing up the client's difficult emotions because I'm not feeling resilient. I'm sure many of us are experiencing that. And I'm going to say mountain, mountain, and more mountain. Not a question, but I like the golden rule. And it's not difficult in theory, you know. Try and do as you would be done by. I've lived by that my whole career. I was a terrible manager, actually, of people, and I just wasn't a good manager because sometimes I think that, oh, huddle on Zoom or MS Teams. Thank you, Catherine. You've got me out of that one. And yeah, you can huddle on Zoom, you know, and find that intelligent kindness. Can you recommend any apps or websites for keeping children calm during these testing times, depending on the age of the children? But Daisy Berry says she thinks she can answer that one. So if we're able, Daisy, just to send in your answer to that one, because if you, for those of you with young children, have a look at the DNAV website, and there's loads of stuff for using the DNAV approach, which is the way I work with children with anxiety. It's capital D, capital A, N, capital A, hyphen little v. And if you Google that and then put in the words Louise Hayes, there's so many resources around DNAV, and it's wonderful. It's kind of mindful stuff. I work in a community trust, and we want to create spaces for staff to share concerns. How can we do this with meaning but virtually? I'm going to suggest you have a look at action learning sets, virtual action learning sets, by the work of Reg Revens. Google action learning sets, Reg Revens. They work beautifully. Some of us use prayer as a mean for meditation and for mindfulness. Is there any evidence, huge evidence about the power of prayer? Enormous, really good evidence to say that prayer works, you know, and I pray a lot. Please could you put the character strength back up so I can note the website? I wonder if I will, I promise. So let me just put that up now, because we could have that one up while I was going through these, couldn't I? Oh, where's it gone? There it is. And I'll see if I can move that out of the way. There we go. And there's, the best way to do it is just to Google VIA character strengths. And, you know, I found out that recently my top character strength was appreciation of love and beauty. And I went outside and enjoyed trees more. How do I support staff who are excessively anxious and fearful? I would point them to the film of this webinar, which I imagine SBK will be sharing. Thanks, Mike. My pleasure, Sarah. Lots of people saying that they've really liked it. I find it difficult to stop crying. My mask and eye protection prevent others from seeing me. Don't stop. You know, neurologically speaking, we cry to cool our face. Crying is wonderful. I cry all the time. This too shall pass. Yeah. I love the this too shall pass metaphor. It's a really good story, the this too I shall pass story. Would you please share your structured worry time? I shall send that to SBK later on this evening. And a big hello to Jason Isaacs, someone said. Really helpful, Mike. I'm going to be using the mountain. I have a very similar situation to your nurse fiance. How do I overcome my fears? Finance situation, not fiance, finance. I can't read today. Well, I overcame it by taking my mountain into every situation. I also overcame it by accepting that I'm a flawed human being, and to be scared is fine. And there's none so brave that feel fear and do it anyway. You know, how do I reassure my pregnant women who don't know the implications of the infection until the baby is born? I think use the serenity stuff, you know. I'd like to finish what made you think you weren't a good manager. I was just rubbish at the paperwork. I think I was a very popular manager and people liked me, but I was just rubbish at being organized enough to do the paperwork. Yeah, technology. I agree. Abby's just come through to say this has been very useful. Thank you. Oh God, excuse me. Thank you. Going to share it. Sitting Still Like a Frog by Aline Snell, wonderful, is a great mindfulness exercise. I love sitting still by a frog. I have a problem sleeping and keep waking feeling anxious. I'll send the sleep meditation. I'll send all my meditation, but really work with the one called Leaves on a Stream. If you're waking up at night, there's also a really helpful thing called cognitive shuffling, and I'll send that as well. And the process of cognitive shuffling is what you do when you suddenly wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep. Thanks, I feel better after this. I feel strong and ready for what's ahead. Send your meditations to everybody. I'm not proud. They're lovely meditations, actually. Recently, I've been taking Viktor Frankl from the Siobhan tells me that. Oh, Siobhan, me too. Great man and a fabulous book. Yeah, we're doing daily pairing via Teams to connect with other team members. Thank you. Last time I saw you, you were in a full neck brace, Mike Scanlan. Yeah, I was. I'd just broken my neck, hadn't I? And yeah, I've come out the other side. And someone there saying cognitive shuffling is my favorite. Thank you, Katie. Oh, it's nice meeting old friends tonight as well. How lovely. I wake up anxious and I'm alternating singing and breathing practice with stretching. Yeah, I would really push you towards yoga, everybody, as well, and particularly yin yoga. And the last one I've got through is enjoy this evening and we'll be sharing the mountain. We're approaching a new norm and have to be prepared for the horizon and the changing scenery. Yep, you be mountains and we'll get through this session. And the last one just says, great session from Lisa. And that brings us to 8 o'clock. And I see Vanessa is back. So thank you all for putting up with me today. And I'll go back to Vanessa.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was really moving and powerful. SBK would like to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. The work that you're doing is not easy right now, and we are so grateful for your dedication and your hard work. It really does make us proud to be and work with the NHS. Thank you so much and goodbye.
Yeah, I'd heartily support that. Goodbye.